Hello, everybody. Welcome to another Comic Source Comic Boom collaboration. It's time for your DC Comics Spotlight for the week of April 30th, 2024. This is the fifth Tuesday of the month. We don't have 5 Wednesdays, but we do have 5 Tuesdays this month. And as per usual, when there are 5 release weeks in a month, which happens 4 times a year, a lot of the, at least the big 2, they take it as a chance to put out annual specials, books that are late, to get them back on schedule or what have you. So no different this week with DC. We have a one-shot that ties in to the big House of Brainiac event that's going on right now. We have an anthology, kind of their summer special, if you will. And then we have annuals. So I think, only 5 books this week. And I got to say, typically you don't really expect much from weeks like this, expect much from annuals and specials. I feel like once in a while you can kind of be surprised and things will oh man, that was really, really good. That's not the case this week. I don't want to say underwhelmed because I wasn't necessarily expecting, a lot. But what does it say when I look at the week and I'm like, oh, I only have to read 5 books? Like, I feel like I'm sort of enjoying DC books, like the tracker hasn't been so bad. But then at the same time, man, when I see a week where, man, I only have to read 5 books and I'm excited about that. I mean, it could be worse, right? I mean, we had weeks, especially toward the end of last year, 14, 17, 18 books. So yeah, at least if the stuff was subpar, there wasn't a lot of it to read. And again, I wasn't expecting much. When I see Harley Quinn, when I see Flash, I'm not expecting much. That being said, there was kind of a standout book for me, I feel like. So yeah, I guess we'll go through them and see how we feel. And I'm gonna have something to say about anthologies as well. But let's start over Rocky first. What do you think of this week overall? Good, bad, indifferent?
I'm between bad and indifferent. Although there was one that I will. Let's put it this way: I had a very easy pick of the week. There was only one contender as far as I was concerned, and it'd be interesting to see if you and I are going to pick the same book. Maybe we won't, but it was an easy pick for me, and I was generally underwhelmed. And there was one that I just sort of shook my head on. I'm definitely going to be ranting on at least one of the comic books for sure, and I'll try to keep my rant to a minimum. But I'll stay relatively diplomatic. I think I still got some residual anger in me. I want to keep it to a minimum. No Amanda Waller hate this week. Although I got some issues, but no Amanda Waller hate, which some people will appreciate, because there's a couple of people in the comments from previous weeks thought that we were going a little bit overboard in our Amanda Waller hate, by the way. And I acknowledged that, and I said, well, I'll try to keep it down on my end, but I can't say anything about Chase, so.
Yeah, well, I'll set the record straight right now for all of you that are, because I did see those comments as well. I chose not to engage. There's no such thing as too much Amanda Waller hate in my mind. There simply isn't. The way DC has shoved her down our throats, I can't. I don't have anything to say about Amanda. I don't have anything new to add to my opinion of Amanda Waller. My rant last week, I felt kind of bad after, to be honest. Once we stopped recording, even kind of during. I have no rants this week at all. I think I fulfilled my rant quota for quite a while. Of course, if anybody has the ability to flip that and trigger me, it would be Amanda Waller. That's not going to happen this week. I'll say that right now. Definitely no rants again, because when it comes down to it, and we get the Superman special, of course I expect to see Amanda Waller in there, and of course I expect her to be, who she is now, who she has become. But that being said, I thought she was portrayed pretty accurately, I guess we'll say, from Joshua Williamson, and she didn't do anything that was too triggering, I guess, for lack of a better word. So yeah, I don't really have anything to say about that. And then, like I said, when it comes to a couple of the other annuals, they were what I expected them to be, which was I didn't, they didn't do it for me. Maybe I'm not the target audience. I think on one, unfortunately I am the target audience, and it's just not working.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, we'll kick it off with the Spring Breakout, which is kind of the spring break special. I mentioned I'd have something to say about anthologies, and what I want to say is this. So we talked, when we first started doing this, and DC was putting out a lot of titles, and sometimes we'd see characters that we hadn't seen in a long time, and other times we'd really enjoy seeing some of those more obscure characters and what have you, and we kind of lamented them not showing up, and we also lamented the fact that DC was putting out so many books, and we thought, I actively said, I think anthologies is the answer. And now we have a lot of anthologies, and we've talked about this a lot recently, right? Whenever there's a big event, whether it's Night Terrors, or I think it really kicked off with DC Death Metal. We certainly saw it with Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths, and just these events, rather than having like a 4-issue mini or buy a kind of standard creative team or like the same creative team on all 4 issues, we get these minis, or we get these anthologies, and I feel a little bit hypocritical because I struggle to read them. The quality's not that great. And all of a sudden I'm saying I don't want anthology. I don't. And I feel like a hypocrite because I was saying all along, hey, DC anthology, it's the way to go. What kind of thing? It struck me yesterday. This is the problem, right? We asked for anthologies, or I'll just speak for myself. I asked for anthologies, and we're getting anthologies. Be careful what you ask for, I guess, or maybe be more specific when you ask. When I'm talking about anthologies, I'm talking about, an oversized book, 80 pages, 100 pages, so the equivalent of 4 or 5 issues, right? But with kind of the regular series, right? So it's almost like you're getting a trade, right? But instead of 4 issues of the same book, you're getting 1 issue of 4 or 5 different books, right? So say you had an anthology that came out 4 times a year, once a quarter, and it had Superman, a story from each: Superman, Wonder Woman, Batman, Green Lantern, Flash. Say those 5, right? And so you would buy 4 books a year, and you would get the main story, the regular story, with the creative teams that are on those books. I'm not personally attacking anybody, and I'm not saying that these people that are doing the work in these anthologies aren't talented. But what I'm saying is they're not getting veteran creators. They're not getting the creators that they feel like, hey, this creator's good enough and popular enough and has honed their craft, and they're a veteran creator, and we're going to put them on Batman, or we're going to put them on Superman, or we're going to put them on Flash, or whatever, right?
Yeah.
And we expect high quality, good stories. And for the most part, at least with what you and I feel, we get that with most of these stories. We're loving Superman right now. We're really enjoying Tom King's Wonder Woman, Green Lantern with Jeremy Adams. Like these books are good. Like, we're enjoying them. I'm not enjoying these anthologies, and I'm trying to understand why. And then I look at the creative lineups, and I'm like, well, I don't know half the names, and that's saying something because, obviously I read a lot of comics. Again, these people do need a way to hone their craft and to learn and to work with editors and work with artists and what have you. So I don't begrudge it, but I just want to point out that I'm feeling less hypocritical. I asked for anthologies, but this is not what I meant, because a lot of times these are a struggle to get through. So that being said, we do have this DC Spring Break special, and here's the stories that are in them. We have a Harley Quinn and King Shark story called Field Trip. It's written by Joey Esposito, again, a name we've seen in anthologies. Vasco Gregov does the art and colors, letters by Jame, I guess is how you pronounce it, Jame. We've got Batman in Cold Feet, written by Thomas Krajewski, again, a name we've seen in these anthologies. Art is by Wes St. Clair, colors by Yvonne Placencia, letters by Tom Napolitano. Teen Titans in Relay for Your Life, written by Megan Fitzmartin. Gavin Goudry is the artist, colors by Rico Renzi, letters by Josh Reed. There's a Metal Men story, The Day the Robot Danced, written by James Reed. I don't know that person. I'm not familiar with his work. Scott Collins is the artist, veteran artist. John Kalis on colors, Josh Reed on letters. Soul Survivor, which is a Katana story by Mike W. Barr. It's Mike W. Barr coming back to a character he created. The art is by Kenya Danino. The colors are by Emilio Lopez. Letters by Carlos Mangual. A Lex Luthor story written by Patrick R. Young, art and letters by Nico Baskunin. Shapeshift in the Park, which is a Martian Manhunter story written by Morgan Hampton. Paul Pelletier handles the pencils. Norm Ratman on inks. Aaron Angiolini on colors. Becca Carey handles the letters. And then finally, Opening Day, a Superman story by Cameron Chittick. Art is by Marco Santucci. Colors by Eris Prianto. Letters by Carlos M. Manuel. So 10 stories. Some of these people, again, are names that we're familiar with. Megan Fitzmartin, Morgan Hampton, Mike W. Barr certainly come to mind, and some of the artists we've heard of and colorists and what have, and others. Yeah, I'm not familiar with their work. So I'll throw it over to you, Rocky. Whichever ones you want to talk about, you want to mention something for each of them. The floor is yours, my friend.
Yeah, well, there's three that stood out for me, and just as a general commentary on these anthologies, every now and then I feel I share your hypocrisy. I'm also a little bit hypocritical when it comes to anthologies. I want new up and coming writers to get their chance to shine, and they need it. But then, of course, I'm not going to like all their attempts, right? I don't like everything that Joshua Williams, he's an A-lister, and I don't like everything an A-lister writes. I don't like everything Tom King writes, but some of it I love, right? So I'm not going to like everything an up-and-coming writer writes, and that's okay. And here, there are three standouts for me, and that was, I'll start with the one, I actually like Batman, I like Thomas Krajewski's story, Cold Feet with Batman, where Batman defeats Mr. Freeze, and he tells the story of his childhood where he learned how to dance from Mr. Freeze's, who ends up being revealed to be Nora, Mr. Freeze's love. And the symbolism is that Nora teaches Batman or a young Bruce Wayne how to lead and dance, or by leading herself. And I know this because a bit of useless information for you. I got 3 years of ballroom dancing in me, if you can believe that. And so there's a rule in ballroom dancing that is, and that is, if a woman ever steps on your feet, it's always the woman's fault, because you have to learn how to follow. And a woman who knows how to follow really well, even if she dances with a guy who doesn't know how to lead, she can make the guy feel that he's leading while she's actually in control. That's the irony. And I'm oversimplifying that and exaggerating a bit, but that's the gist of it. And that's the lesson, Cold Feet, what Batman is telling Mr. Freeze this story, while at the same time manipulating Mr. Freeze himself, while he's telling the story of the girl, of an older woman that he danced with when he was a young boy, and this girl ended up being Mr. Freeze's Nora. So I thought that was a really nice story. Do you want to comment on that story, or do you want me to just give you my other two that I like?
The only thing I'll say, that's wasn't one of the ones I enjoyed. Maybe it's because I don't have any ballroom dancing background. I don't know. I thought it was, I mean, he did redeem it, because it was at first like, man, Mr. Freeze defeated Batman relatively easily, but then Batman setting him up. So that wasn't, but it was a little clunky. It was a little awkward for me. So again, it might just be the inexperience of Krajewski.
Well, the second one that I really liked was a Buried Alive by Patrick R. Young. I've not heard of Patrick R. Young, but an interesting Lex Luthor story where Lex Luthor buried, it's revealed that then he buries himself alive just to test himself and to push his limits as a human being, and about he's capable. He's buried alive, and he finds a way to get himself out from being buried alive. And it's something that you would expect Lex Luthor to do, and I thought it worked really well, and I thought that the art was really good, and I'm not sure who the artist was, by Nico Baskinen, written by Patrick R. Young. Yeah, and I thought it was really well done, and again, it's it's what you'd expect Luthor to do, but it's the type of story that tells you something about Lex Luthor. It's what these anthologies should do: character revealing stories that are short stories, yet pack a big, have a good punch to them at the end. And to have it revealed at the end that Lex Luthor routinely tests himself like this by pushing the boundaries of what he's capable of doing as a human being, I thought was interesting. I thought maybe it was a little bit something that you'd expect Batman to test himself on, not necessarily Lex Luthor doing that all the time, but it's a different maybe take on Lex Luthor. but in terms of making him a little bit more maybe uber human, so to speak. But I thought it was an interesting take, and to me, it stood out. So, what do you think of that story?
Yeah, I think the reason that I enjoyed that one so much is for exactly what you said. You said it multiple times. It's exactly something you would expect Luther to do, and give credit to Patrick R. Young. He kept it super focused, right? Hyper focused on just Luther and his thoughts, and the way he challenges himself and makes sure that he can extricate himself from that situation. So yeah, I enjoyed that one as well.
Yeah. Well, the third one that I liked the most was I'm a huge Katana fan from The Outsiders, and I like the fact, even though the story it's called Soul Survivor, it's written by Mike W. Barr, art by Kenya Danamo, and Emilio Lopez on the colors. I liked it. I liked it enough, and basically it involves her fighting this character called the Trafficker, and she's actually trying to rescue the soul of her husband that was killed by Katana and is trapped in Katana's sword, and she ultimately ends up failing and ends up being killed and trapped in the sword herself. And that was my only complaint about the story, is that I thought this new character, the Trafficker, I thought she was interesting enough. I'd like to see her again, but she was killed at the end. But I sort of liked it. It was by the numbers. It wasn't particularly complicated, but it was sort of a nice reminder of why I like Katana. And frankly, because DC's the comics that DC is publishing right now, Katana's not in any of them. And it's a little bit frustrating. So it's nice to see her show up here. I wish she would show up in more places, quite frankly. But I really like seeing her here. And maybe it's because I just miss the character so much. And I think she's one of the more underused characters for DC. And frankly, is one of the more interesting characters when she is on the Suicide Squad. And I'm thinking in particular the Suicide Squad movie more than the comic book. In the comics, you don't normally associate you associate Katana with the Outsiders and not the Suicide Squad. But I'm just surprised Katana is not a character that's used more often in Suicide Squad or in show up more often than she does. But that is my bias, and I enjoyed that story. So those are my top three. So what did you think of Soul Survivor?
Yeah, it was great to see Mike W. Barr, the creator of Katana, get to write the new version, right? Because she is different. The original Katana, her sword wasn't, possessed or whatever. Her late husband wasn't trapped inside of it. And she does look a little different, what have you, different costume. And I think it feels like she's taller, different haircut, what have you. So it was great to see Mike W. Barr, get a chance to write that version of the character. I do feel like that version of the character is a little more interesting. The original Katana was a little bit over her time, a little bit stereotypical, Asian character, and frankly a little bit boring. And so I do like this new character. And again, I love if Mike W. Barr has more to write with her, I would be interested in checking it out. So as far as the actual story beats or what have you, I wasn't as enamored with the Trafficker as you were. The story, other than the fact that Mike W. Barr got a chance to write Katana, felt a little by the numbers, if you will, a little sort of cliched. But yeah, I feel like he just didn't have enough room to really experiment or what have you. So I thought that one was okay. Field Trip, the first one with Harley Quinn and King Shark, yeah, forgettable. Wasn't anything to write home about. Relay for Your Life, which is the Teen Titans story, I thought was probably the most boring story in the book. It really did nothing for me. Didn't think the art was particularly good either. The Metalman story, The Day the Robot Danced, that one was fun, and I thought the Scott Collins art was really good. But you expect Scott Collins art to be good. He's a pro, and I'm a fan of the Metalman, and they don't show up a lot. So yeah, I was happy with that one. I really enjoyed the Shapeshift in the Park by Morgan Hampton. I really enjoyed the Cyborg miniseries that Morgan Hampton did. So I hope he continues to get work at DC, because I thought this one was really great. John Jones is in a park. He's watching theater in a park. And he talks about how even in a crowd of people, he's alone. Like, it really got into the character of Martian Manhunter really, really well. And he did a great job of comparing and contrasting that against Clayface, because Clayface is actually one of the actors who's performing, And it gets into the whole idea of here's two different characters, one a villain, one a hero, one from Earth, one not, who really play roles in their everyday life, whether that be hero, villain, or trying to be, in the case of John Jones, when he's Martian Manhunter, he's playing a role. But even when he's in his civilian disguise, he's playing a role. He's pretending to be human or what have you. So he's sort of always playing a role. And then you have Clayface, who's sort of doing the same thing, right? Like, is he a villain? Is he not? DC's gone back and forth with it, but he doesn't really have a human form anymore either. So even when he's not being Clayface and he's just trying to live his everyday life, he's still playing a role. So that was really interesting to me. And of course, it's Paul Pelletier art, who's an artist that I really like. So that one was pretty good as well. The Superman and opening day, it's Superman and it's baseball. Two of my favorite things. You'd think I would really like it, but it was utterly forgettable. Manchester Black is the villain, but it just didn't work. It felt clunky. It was poorly paced. I didn't think the dialogue was very good.
And Manchester Black is dead in mainstream continuity, so it was just confusing, and I realized these things are out of continuity. But for some reason, that really annoyed me. And he wasn't a villain when he died. He sacrificed. He was killed by Lex Luthor. He went before that. He was a hero, and this makes him look like a cheap villain again. I thought it was very badly done.
Yeah, and normally I'm a huge fan of Marco Santucci, but I felt like the color work and the line work didn't mesh very well together in this particular issue. So, yeah, I wasn't a fan of the finished look of that story either. So, yeah, up and down issue for sure. And these things are $10. So, forewarned is forearmed if you want to spend all that on this anthology. Okay, up next we have Superman House of Brainiac special. So there's 3 stories, but really it's 2 stories, 3 chapters, if you will. The first chapter, the third chapter are written by Joshua Williamson with art by Fico Ossio, colors by Rex Locust, letters by Dave Sharp, and it really focuses on Brainiac and what's going on with the House of Brainiac and Amanda Waller, and how those two tie in, and maybe a little bit of hints of of how Amanda Waller is going to end up working with Queen Brainiac and Failsafe, although Failsafe is neither mentioned nor does he show up here. And then the second chapter is focused in Metropolis on the mayoral race that Perry White is taking part in, and against his opponent, who's one of those blue sky people, blue earthers or whatever they're called. Blue Earther, that's what it is. I'm thinking Blue Sky's the social media thing. But yeah, the Blue Earthers who want aliens to, be thrown out of Metropolis and thrown out of the Earth, whatever. It's written by Mark Russell. Art is by Steve Pugh. Colors by Jordi Belair. Letters by Dave Sharp. I mean, when you want to talk about a story that has sort of this political race at the center of it, I mean, nobody better to write this story than Mark Russell. And Steve Pugh, this is the perfect kind of story for him to illustrate as well. So I thought this one was really, really well done. If not a little frustrating, because Perry White's opponent, Garen Blake, he spews a lot of the nonsense you hear conservatives say about, what illegal aliens are, and how you want them kicked out or whatever. They're taking our jobs, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, they're taking a job that you wouldn't do anyway. Like, if there were no illegal aliens, you would not take that job. You would not do the jobs that they do, especially not for the pay that they do them at. You just wouldn't. You just wouldn't. You would not be better off. So it's just a way for them to, do what they do when it comes to politics, which is, tell you what's wrong with your life and who's to blame for it. They never have any answers of how to fix it. Or if they do have answers, they're illogical, like, removing, aliens from Earth or what have you. So it's a very good story in terms of being kind of meta and accurate, which is exactly what you expect from a Mark Russell story. So I thought it was really, really well done. And as far as the kind of the other 2 chapters, like I said, that really give us a lot of Brainiac and
Amanda Waller.
Yeah, I thought they were done really well. The first chapter really focuses on. You know what? I made a mistake. They're chapter 1 and chapter 3. They are both written by Joshua Williamson. The art in chapter 3 is by Fico Ossio, but the art in chapter 1 is by Edwin Galman. So apologies to Edwin for that. But the first chapter is focused on Zarnia, right? How did Brainiac get all these Zarnians? A little bit of the history. It changes the history of Zarnia ever so slightly. Well, I shouldn't say it changes it, because it's sort of it fills in things that we didn't know and that we assumed weren't necessarily true. But it doesn't contradict anything that's come before in terms of the history of Zarnia or what have you. But I could see that, maybe there's some Lobo super fans out there that are going to say, well, if this had happened, we would have known about it before now. And, that's valid. That's perfectly valid. I'm not a Lobo super fan, and I didn't actually know that much. I went and did a bunch of reading about Zarnia after I read this to see if this was things that we had known before. It turns out, no, it's not. Just the way that some people don't like the fact that the Court of Owls operated in Gotham City for decades and decades, and Batman didn't know about it. It sort of doesn't make sense. Like, we would have heard about it before now. Some of these events we would have heard about before now in a Lobo book or two. But again, it doesn't outright contradict anything. And I think it makes it better. I think it makes the history of Zarnia and the planet and Lobo himself and Zarnians in general, I think it makes them more interesting. So I didn't really have a problem with him, Joshua Williamson adding those things in. And I thought the Gallman art was fine. And then the third chapter, like I said, focused more on Amanda Waller. We get the official answer of how she got back from Earth 1. We get the official answer of who the Council of Light is. Oh, there's multiple members, but it's all Brainiac. Well, we know there's all these different versions of Brainiac right now. And Amanda Waller has worked with Brainiac, worked against Brainiac both before. So there is animosity and history there. So really, the third story, it added the least, I would say, to the House of Brainiac overall story going forward. And these are things that we suspected, as far as the way she got back to Earth Prime from Earth 3 and who the Council of Light was. But this is like official confirmation. So it felt the third story just felt a little redundant, but it wasn't bad. And it definitely reminds us of the animosity between Amanda Waller and Brainiac. And my speculation would be that Amanda is going to maybe sort of begrudgingly agree to work with Brainiac, but then betray him to Queen Brainiac, who I expect is going to be Luthor's daughter with the powers of Brainiac. But we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. But overall, I thought it was decent. It was decent. I enjoyed the second story the most, probably. But I thought the first chapter was good as well. And the third one's not bad. It just more of setup than anything else. So what were your thoughts on it overall?
Well, first I'll make some comments on Amanda Waller. I'm actually intrigued a little bit by this because I'm surprised that before Absolute Power ever really begins, already we're seeing, Amanda Waller here and Brainiac, they separate. Amanda Waller discovers that, she agrees with an unknown force to come back, to return from Earth 3 under the guise of destroying and destroying all the superheroes. She doesn't even know who pulled her back from Earth 3 until now. And then when she finds out it's Brainiac, suddenly she's not going to work with Brainiac. Okay, so then immediately it's suggested, Brainiac suggests that he's looking for this power grab, but so is Amanda Waller. So right off the bat, I'm wondering, so Amanda Waller, unless they get together at some point after this, Amanda Waller and Brainiac are already not working together. That is, they're both working toward a common goal, but they're doing it separately, not together. Well, that's gonna have repercussions. And it makes me wonder, where does Failsafe fit into this? Failsafe, and I wonder if Failsafe absolutely has his own agenda, but how does it align with Brainiac and Amanda Waller? We could have all three supervillains all working toward the same goal, but all vying for the same absolute power. Maybe that's what absolute power refers to, is that it refers to a Waller, Failsafe, and the Brainiac Queen vying for absolute power. And of course, we all know the ending of the phrase, absolute power corrupts, or power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. So I find that somewhat intriguing.
Well, we don't actually know if Brainiac is in absolute power, though. He hasn't been mentioned. It's always been Queen Brainiac. So I kind of wonder if
we know that Queen Brainiac. I'm assuming that's what he's creating with all he's been creating something, a version of himself in the last 3 issues of Superman. I mean, so that's what I'm assuming.
Yeah,
and I think that's what your theory is, right?
Yeah, well, I think that his creation maybe replaces him.
Well, yeah, no, I think, well, yeah, but I mean, it's still Brainiac. I mean, that's what I'm getting at. To me, it's still a version of Brainiac, right? Because here it's revealed in this issue. Well, no, his version of it's clear in this issue. His focus was initially on Zarnia. He was attracted to Zarnia because the Trib on Zarnia was going to give him the secret of immortality. She tries to make a deal with Brainiac, and then he ends up betraying Zarnia, and a lot of his knowledge on immortality he ends up taking with him. And like you alluded to, he's probably going to betray Luthor somehow to use Lena. And maybe, like you said, you might be right. Lena might be the Brainiac Queen or linked to the Brainiac Queen in some way. That's interesting. But it just seems to me that but Brainiac does want power here. He does want power, but what exactly does that power look like and to what goal? And I would add that what I find interesting about this in this issue is how Brainiac he decides not to destroy Zarnia when he goes back to it. He decides not to destroy Zarnia at one point because he feels, he calls it a default in his program, or he calls it a momentary breakdown in his computer breakdown or computer programming or whatever, but it's actually compassion. It seems to me that Brainiac did not destroy Zarnia because he decided to exercise compassion because he saw his Zarnian father, fight to protect his children. And he did that. And he seems to have Brainiac seems to be fascinated with that, and he's fascinated with humans, and he's even fascinated with Amanda Waller at some point. And so I'm wondering if, and here's my speculation, is at some point, well, Brainiac, wouldn't it be the ultimate irony of Brainiac as the one that betrays, I thought betraying Failsafe or Amanda Waller by Brainiac himself, his own programming, his own quest for humanity. I think there's an aspect of Brainiac that has developed compassion. At least that's it's hinted at here. But, well, maybe not. But I thought it wouldn't. I'm curious because hearing your theory about Lena being the Brainiac Queen or being linked, that's interesting. But Lena is going to combine her human instinct with Brainiac. Brainiac's already showing signs of having compassion. If Lena's involved in that, and she's going to further, I think, complicate Brainiac's programming with emotions, human emotions. And I think it's interesting. And then with all these new Zarnians under General Chakal and Lobo, I'm really curious to see where this goes. And so this intrigued me enough that I'm really curious to see how this is going to end up.
Yeah, I don't think the Brainiac Queen is going to be a version of Brainiac in any way, shape, or form. Like it's going to be a completely separate character in my mind. But you could be right in terms of, wouldn't it be interesting if Brainiac is the one that ends up saving the day or helping to save the day by defeating the Brainiac Queen. So the Brainiac Queen in my mind is a completely separate character that has all the knowledge of Brainiac with different motivations. Will Brainiac ultimately be the one that stops these three, that stops Brainiac Queen and Amanda Waller and Failsafe, because of exactly what you said, because of that compassion. We'll have to see. I don't think in my mind that the Brainiac Queen is going to be, just another version of Brainiac. Like we see right now, all these different versions of Brainiac, predecessors, ancestors, whatever, drawing from different versions that we've seen in Superman comics over the years. I don't see Brainiac Queen as being one of those. I think she'll be her own kind of independent character, but I could be completely wrong. We'll see.
Yeah, well, it ends with Brainiac saying, Waller will never obtain the knowledge of true power. My creation will see to that. And I guess his creation presumably will be the Brainiac Queen. And
what? It could be one of the Amazos.
I I guess it could. That's the curse of reading future solicits. I saw Brainiac Queen, and I just assume that's what's going to be created. But I also, it's an open question. Who are all these other Brainiacs? Are these other Brainiacs that were in the room? Are those other, like, because it was the Council of Light. And if the Council of Light consisted of all these different Brainiacs, where did all these other Brainiacs come from? Presumably other universes? Because remember, like, there was a universe even in the Milestone universe, and we assumed it was the one that was still from Earth, from the Earth designated zero universe. So
Yeah, but there's been multiple versions of Brainiac in this, in the Prime as well. Because even when what's her name, Mrs. Tibbs or whatever, she says, when the Brainiac came and it was, a different Brainiac, it was like Brainiac 2.0. Now we're on Brainiac like 5.7 or whatever.
yeah,
When it comes to those aliens, those Kaluans or whatever, we know there's different iterations. I mean, you have the same thing in the Legion of Superheroes, right? There's a Brainiac there. He's a hero. He's human, or not human, but humanoid. He's not the same as this type of Brainiac. So yeah,
yeah.
I don't know, but you could be right. They could be from other parts of the multiverse. It hasn't necessarily been made clear.
Yeah, and it's worth noting that one of the ways that Mark Russell tied in his story with Perry Wright Running from Air is that it ends with one of the political, I guess, one of the citizens of Metropolis going to Bibbo's bar at the end, who was basically on the other side, who didn't, who was on a different side politically than Bibbo. He basically tells Bilbo that he doesn't really know what he wants, but he knows what he doesn't want to be. And so the suggestion at the end of the story that Mark Russell's trying to show is that even if you're at two very different sides of the political spectrum, you can still have a dialogue. You still have to work. We may disagree on our politics, but we intuitively know, at least we got to maintain a sense of morality and a sense of what is right and what is wrong. And so, and that is something that immediately following Mark Russell's story, we have it's clear that Brainiac has been sort of observing those events in Metropolis, because he says, fascinating, even in dire times, humanity finds a way to connect. And so all stories that are sort of connected, at least with that common theme. And then Brainiac himself seems to be fascinated about humanity's propensity to even he was fascinated with the Zarnians, that even in with their impending doom, they still fought for their lives, even though they knew they were doomed. And just like humanity, despite political turmoil, will nonetheless find a way to reach a consensus or connect. And so I thought it was, overall, I thought this was not a bad issue, and not my pick of the week, but it's not a bad issue.
Yeah, I mean, you do kind of wonder, how necessary it was to have this whole special dedicated to this, because again, nothing groundbreaking, although like I said, I did appreciate the additions to the Zarnian mythos, if you will, and we officially get answers for Amanda Waller coming back from Earth 3, and who the Council of Light is. And as far as like her agreeing to come back from a force, an entity unknown, I completely see Amanda Waller doing that. If they say, hey, we're going to bring you back to Earth Prime, and we're going to help you gain power and remove all the superpowers from that Earth, she'd jump at that regardless of who was, behind it. And her thinking would be, if there was somebody behind it who had ill intentions, she'd outsmart them in the end, right? That's her arrogance. All right. Up next, we have Flash 2024 Annual #1, written by Cy Spurrier, art by Scott Koblish, Ammon K. Nahelipan, George Combatis, and Tom Dernick. Colors by Marissa Louise, Lee Luffridge, and Matt Herms. Letters by Hassan Otsman Elhau. I don't really know what else to say about this story, right? This is what I was referring to when I said, sometimes stuff's just not for you. Flash is supposed to be for me. This is supposed to be a superhero book. I'm a superhero guy. I'm a DC guy. This should be for me. And I just don't like it. And that's not a big secret, right? Anybody who's listened to our reviews of The Flash. 3 artists here, and a couple of talented artists, but I thought the art was kind of subpar and felt
There's
really
four
washed
artists. There's four artists.
out. 4 artists, and I felt like the art. I mean, I couldn't even really like Lemon Kane and Helipan. Like I usually really like his art. I couldn't even tell which pages were his, and I thought the coloring felt washed out. There's supposed to be all these esoteric, symbols and backgrounds with a bunch of right angles and lines and things are looking all abstract or whatever. Yeah, it just didn't work, and the whole science word salad is back in full effect. And I read this 3 times, and I still don't have the greatest handle on what's going on in the story, other than to say there's something wrong with the Speed Force. And again, it's been done to death. That story has been done to death. I guess it's sort of interesting that we see the rogues sort of powered up, whether it's Mirror Master, Abracadabra, or what have you. And this character of the Pilgrim, this sort of, I don't want to say time cop, almost like a multiversal cop. He's sort of interesting as a character, although his plate on the head look is really terrible. I mean, he literally looks like he has a giant like plate or trash can lid on his head. He looks ridiculous. The character design's awful. But other than that, there's not really much I can say about this issue. I will give credit to Cy Spurrier for taking the idea of the still force and the stillness and kind of fleshing that out, but he didn't flesh out in a way that's necessarily interesting. So these are kind of these elder beings of the universe who are sort of dipping their influence in here or there. And why? Oh, because they're bored. Really? That's what we're going with? That's just boring, for lack of a better term. And it goes back to some other things that never got fleshed out. I mean, we were told at one point by DC that in addition to the Speed Force, there were 6 other forces, and they were all going to be explored in Justice League or whatever. And they never really were. It never got, we couldn't say, okay, like we can name the spectrums of the Green Lantern. Or not Green Lantern, but the Lantern spectrums, right? Like we can name them. We can name the colors, and we know what they do. Yellow is fear, and orange is avarice or greed. Violet is love, and blue is compassion or hope. We know what they do. We know what they are. White is life. Black is death. That's cool. They're fleshed out. We understand them. That's what I thought we were going to get with these forces, and we never did. So at least Spurrier is picking up the idea of the still force and playing with it a little bit, so it's not completely wasted as a concept. But I don't know. Maybe we'd be better off if we didn't, because what he's doing is boring. Like, these guys are bored. The members of the stillness are bored. Guess what? I'm bored reading about you guys. So we're even. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I just can't wait for this run of Flash to be over. Like, is this the only story that Cy Spurrier is going to do? I don't know. Is it just one big story with Wally and everybody trying to figure out what's wrong with the Speed Force, and then once it's fixed, then Spurrier's out of ideas, or will we get some, what I would say, or what I would describe as more traditional superhero type stories with the Flash, with either Wally or Barry and Cy Spurrier writing it? If that's the case, hey, great. I'm happy to give something else a try, some other Flash story a try from Cy Spurrier. Happy to do that. The guy is talented. What I don't want more of is this gobbledygook. I am so ready for whatever this thing is that he's doing to be over, because it is not working for me at all. I hope that's not too much of a rant. I wasn't going to rant. It's just not working for me. And I don't know anybody, like, this is the one book. Like, typically I don't go and look at a lot of other reviews. There's a few people comic book reviewers whose opinions I really respect. And that's not to say I always agree with them, but when I don't agree with them and I read their review and I can see where they're coming from and I understand, even though, I may not feel the same way. Um, but Flash, it's the one book where every time an issue comes out, I go to Comic Book Roundup and I look at the aggregate reviews and because I want it. Am I missing something? And I will say, for the most part, those reviews have been trending down, 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 down since the beginning.
Yep.
So I don't feel like I'm an outlier here, that this is not working. And again, it baffles me that DC took Jeremy Adams off of the Flash to give us this. Like,
Yeah,
when we heard that and we heard the terms cosmic horror and Spurrier and Flash, we knew it was going to be a train wreck. Like, and we're not professional editors. We're not people making decisions at DC Comics. But if we knew, what in God's name were they thinking? What in God's name were they thinking? So anyway, I'm done. What do you have to say? This is your book of the week, isn't it?
No, this is no. You give a mild rant. My rant is, I don't know. I'm a stream of consciousness kind of guy. I say whatever comes, when I feel like ranting. I will say this. I don't know what we got, 6, 7 issues of Spurrier Flash leading in this annual, and we're 29 page. It's not until page 29 of this that we get some semblance as to what has been going on from the beginning. And it's sad because here's what I think, dare I say, I think I know what Cy Spurrier was hoping that the series would be interpreted as, because there's some kind of cool concepts here. You got this, the Stillness are described as like they're the ultimate super conduits of the Speed Force. They're multi-dimensional beings that are the conduit of the Speed Force, the Stillness. But they've lived for so long that they become bored. And the problem is that when the Stillness becomes bored, they desired to end. They just wanted to end. And they became lazy, and these cosmic beings called the Stillness, they gave up on their connections to various other dimensional beings, and they gave up on their connections to other things, including, I'm guessing, some of the conduits of the Speed Force. And so that's why maybe things got a little wonky. But that's also why the Stillness desired the Archangels, higher dimensional beings. They're sort of courting the Archangels. They're hoping that the Archangels have the power to end them, to wipe them out of existence. And I think, and this is where I might be wrong, I think the Archangels sided with the Rogues, or kind of are working with the Rogues. And the Folded Man the Folded Man, along with Abacadabra, they're creating the illusion that the Speedster's powers are destroying reality. Gorilla Grodd wants young Jay to think that he's got to kill his father Wally because Wally's using the Speed Force too much. Abracadabra wants to convince Wally to use that the use of his powers is destroying things. The Mirror Master is manipulated Irie into creating a Speed Force, into finding the Speed Force drug that a lot of the homeless were using, that were giving them the Speed Force. So what's happening is, looking at this as a whole, Irie is thinking she's doing great. Irie wants to create a Speed Force drug to help the homeless out, which of course all the other speedsters are thinking that they got to stop using the Speed Force because they're being convinced it's destroying reality. Even though Jay Garrick at the beginning says, no, that's not true. We're being, that's not true. Speed Force is a force for good, et cetera, et cetera. But all the Rogues together are trying to create the illusion and to trick all the speedsters into believing that they're more dangerous than not. And if they can trick them into having to kill Wally or eliminate or stop being speedsters, I think that's their ultimate goal. And the Folded Man, he mentions certain things that I think they're being promised certain things by the Folded Man is being, the Archangels have given Gorilla Grodd extra tech to enhance his mental powers. Abracadabra becomes more of a psychic player. The Folded Man gets mastery over Euclidean space, and I think he's going to get that from the Archangels, I think. And so Yeah, so that's kind of what the most I could get out of it. And on the surface, I can see what Spurrier maybe was trying to do. Let me give you an example. I remember how cool it was, even reading the back issues of Fantastic Four, those early issues where you first meet Galactus and you Celestials over. There was something epic when you met the cosmology over in the MCU is fantastic. When you met these cosmological interdimensional beings, there was a majesty to them. You respected them. Spurrier, for whatever reason, decides that every time we see the stillness, they apparently they're super dimensional beings, but they don't know how to speak English clearly. Why do they speak in riddles? Why does every time we run into the archangels, they can't talk normal? Why are they talking in riddles? I mean, they're supposed to be smart, aren't they? I mean, everything is, if you want the readership to get in, what's that?
Everything is unnecessarily complicated.
Exactly. If you want readers to, I mean, the idea of the stillness is kind of cool. We got multiversal Speed Force beings called the stillness. That's cool. Well, why make them why make them sound so ridiculous? Why make them seem so inaccessible? At least let us understand their language. Like, I mean, because we struggle to even find out what's going on. I mean, there's a whole sequence here where Wally ends up looking at a bunch of floating plasma, and they're supposed to be apparently conduits of emotions, and he ends up talking to creatures that remain unidentified by Spurrier, and he doesn't even know where he is. They claim they're the apparatus of existence. What does that mean? And then to top it off, he ends up at the source wall. And then Spurrier is sort of rewriting what the source wall is. He says the source wall is merely the highest vibration before one enters the infinite. Well, okay, I guess that's maybe what it is, but then I always thought the source wall was just a wall between universes. Again, you're taking something that we already know what it is, and you're adding complications to it. Or is he suggesting that beyond the source wall is heaven? I don't really know, but all of this is so unnecessarily confusing. And even if it's not confusing, even if I'm 20% right in what I just said, because I admit I could be totally wrong, and people will let us know in the comments, and you can correct me on it. I'm not going to defend myself here. Even if I'm only 20% right, the fact of the matter is, this is homework. This feels like a chore reading it. And I read this 3 times. It took me 45 minutes to read this the 3rd time I read it. I took the time because I wanted to understand it. And I bet you I got a lot of it wrong. And I admit to that. But I read it out of frustration, and it's not an enjoyable read. It's frustrating to read. And I don't know, what are we supposed to get out of it? What I do find interesting is that, you know how we thought that maybe Linda Park was written out of character in the 1st issue or the 2nd issue? I guess now he's got an explanation. Linda Park was written out of character because Gorilla Grodd, somebody is manipulating her to act like a bitch. So in fact, she really does love Wally, but she's saying things, she says, I can't bring myself to care about Wally. I guess Linda, that's not how Linda feels. She's being manipulated to say that to Amanda Waller of all people. And again, why is Amanda Waller and Linda, why does Amanda Waller know any of this? How can Tech know about the agendas of multiversal beings like the stillness, the uncoiled, and the archangels? I don't know how they would have obtained any of that through Tech, through their labs. Again, even the look of Wally West, while it was kind of cool that he's got these cool looking, he's got this cool looking armor. Why does Wally West have armor? I must have missed that in the previous issue. I don't know why he's wearing this armor. It looks, there are aspects of this, despite having 4 artists, where it looks cool. But unfortunately, for the most part, there are elements where the artistic change I thought was very, very jarring. And I don't think it was intended to be that. But I hate to say this, but, one thing that Jack Kirby did, that he gave you a sense with the Kirby Crackle, that when you were dealing with the infinite or the unexplainable, you could somehow appreciate the fantastic through the art. We've had multiple artists, 4 artists on this one, and we've got even one of my favorite artists, Mike Diodano Jr. He's done his noblest best, but if five, no less than five, and I'm probably missing an artist, if no less than five artists can't, in my view, encapsulate what your story is, I think that there's something wrong with the story. I'm not going to blame these five talented artists. These four plus Mike Diodato Jr. That's where I'm inclined to do. And finally, you and I both want to give it. We want to be fair to Spurrier. We love his Hellblazer, and he's it's just this particular Flash run. It's not working. It's not working, and it's going to. I hate to say this, but it's going to have to take future writers to make sense out of the stillness and the uncoiled and the arc angles, because Spurrier has failed to do so.
Yeah, I don't really know, what else that we can say about this. That yeah, I do think that there are, like you mentioned, there are some interesting ideas here, and I bet in Spurrier's head this is a fantastic story, but maybe it's the wrong story for a comic, or maybe it's the wrong story to tell in the amount of pages he has to tell it. One of the things I love is when I get, especially for a comic book that I really enjoy, is getting to see the script, right? Getting to see, because you read the script and then you see what the artist did, but you can learn more. There's things that you might not realize that the artist put in there because of the description of the panel that the writer put in, and it kind of enriches the story. And it's one of the reasons I loved recently having Tom King on, and Daniel Sampere was on as well. And we did this a couple times while we were chatting. I put the page up, and then Tom read his, description in the script of what he sent over to Daniel. And then Daniel got to talk about, how he built it. That's fantastic. This might be, now don't get me wrong, I probably don't care enough about this story that I would go back and read the scripts, because oh my God, what must it look like? But I just bring this up to illustrate the fact that there just may be things that we are missing as readers, or that there's not room for on the page, or there's not room for in the art, that, again, in Spurrier's head, it's probably making complete sense, and it's probably a cool story. Not saying that this is necessarily the right place for it, a Flash comic. But yeah, we can see some really cool ideas, but it's, like I said, it's just not working. At the end of the day, it's just not working, and I can't wait for it to be over. All right. Well, since we only have two left, Rocky, I think I know exactly what your book of the week is. We're gonna skip to Harley Quinn, 2024 annual #1 by Erica Henderson. She handles the art, she handles the writing, she handles the colors, and letters are by Hassan Otsman Elhau. And at the beginning, and again, Erica Henderson, known for her work over at Marvel on Squirrel Girl and what have you, and she's a very talented writer and artist. And this story starts off with Harley being part of a crew, and they rob a bank, and they get jewels, they get cash, they get cryptocurrency, they get a bunch of cool stuff. Harley decides to take her winnings and go on a cruise. And part of the reason she does this is because when she teams up with this crew to rob the bank, and this is a brilliant idea from Erica Henderson. She teams up with this crew to rob the bank, and they dress in dark clothes, and they sneak in under the cover of night, and they break into the bank, and they rob it, and they get away scot-free. Nobody knows who they are, and even the camera footage that exists where they got seen on camera, nobody can tell who they are, right? And they're kind of talking about it after the heist. And, they're saying, isn't it amazing if you don't write it on a big clown float, or write cute riddles, or freeze the entire building, or leave a pile of umbrellas? You just go in there and rob and leave, and you're quiet and you keep a low profile. The cops don't instantly know who to look for. Brilliant idea, right? And Harley's like, wait, what? They're like, yeah, this is what normal thieves do, right? So it was successful, and they get a pile of loot. And so, she gets her cut, and she's thinking, well, being normal, normal type crime worked out. We were able to, get a bunch of cash here. What do normal people do after they, come into a windfall? Well, they go on a cruise. So she chooses to go on a cruise, and then hijinks ensue, as often is the case with Harley. I will also give Erica Henderson credit for giving us an in-story explanation of why Poison Ivy doesn't go along with her. Poison Ivy's like, nah, I'm not getting on that floating petri dish, but also gives Harley a deep, soulful kiss and says, "You're now inoculated against any of the boat diseases." Passes that on, which would mean that Poison Ivy is inoculated as well, but doesn't mean she wants to go on the cruise and take any chances. Once Harley's on the cruise, like I said, hijinks ensue. Day one, it's a great montage piece. She has a great time, and by day two, she's like, too many people, too much noise, blah, blah, blah. And she goes looking into shows, what shows, what entertainment, and it turns out that Zatanna is there putting on a magic show, but actually Zatanna is there trying to relax because superheroes don't get time off and they don't get paid and they, whatever. So she actually has this magic clone of herself, a magical simulacrum that's putting on the shows. While she actually tries to have a vacation. And that's basically the gist of it. That's basically the gist of the story. So it's not like it's really groundbreaking or really that memorable. The reason for Harley going on the cruise and this kind of sort of little dig at the nonsense and sort of the stupidity of the Batman rogues, always letting people know they're the ones that committed the crime. I really enjoyed that. Again, I love the in-story explanation for why Poison Ivy didn't go along. But the rest of it, yeah, it felt just a little bit paint by the numbers. And even though I get that she's super talented and people love her Squirrel Girl stories and her style of art does suit these, sort of fun, cutesy type stories, I'm not a fan of the style of art. And I've never read any Squirrel Girl for exactly that reason. Like, I know that's not a character that I'm going to enjoy. So I've never taken the time to do that. So I recognize this is not for me, but it is well paced and I think it's well written and Erica Henderson is talented. But one of the things that it did make me think about, a lot of times maybe we're a little harsh on Harley Quinn stories in this iteration or that iteration. I talk about all the time. My favorite Harley story is probably Criminal Insanity by Cami Garcia. The Harley Quinn in the Sean Gordon Murphy verse is another one I really enjoy. And those are versions of the character that are much more serious and, kind of much more realistic. The zany, goofy Harley, I can sort of do without. But it made me realize, like, certainly more than any other recent character, like Harley's the most recent character I can think about. The other ones that come to mind are probably Wolverine, Batman, and maybe Superman to a lesser extent, that you can write all these different versions. Like, the characters are malleable enough, and maybe I should say the characters are popular enough that the companies want to churn out all sorts of different versions to try to reach all different sensibilities or what have you. So, I'm always kind of harsh on these Harley Quinn stories that are kind of zany and funny and wacky and what have you, because it's not the version of Harley that I enjoy. But maybe I'm coming at it from the wrong direction. Maybe I should realize that, hey, it's a testament to the power of the character and the popularity of the character that she can support all these different types of stories, all these different types of versions. I don't know. But what I will say and push back a little bit on is, Batman's the perfect example, right? Like, we have the ultra serious power creep Batman in the pages of the Batman comic, Chip Zdarsky's writing it and what have you. And then when we get a Batman annual, it's in that same sort of vein and same sort of sensibility. But then we have things like Batman Robin Howard, where it's a completely different Bruce Wayne, completely different sort of sensibility for, that version of Batman or whatever. And we're okay with that. But it's because it's often its own little thing. This is in the main Harley Quinn, annual that ties in, or supposedly, annuals used to tie in with the regular series. And so that's where I have a little bit of a problem. Like, you want to write different versions of Harley and what have you. Just like we get different versions of Wonder Woman, right? We had all those young Diana stories where it's a wildly different version of the character. But what did we not like about those young Diana stories? The fact that they kept shoehorning them in the back of regular Wonder Woman issues that had very adult themes. Like, the incongruity doesn't work. Don't do that. Don't do that, DC. So again, this might have been, hey, we want Erica Henderson to do a Harley Quinn story. It shouldn't have been in the annual. It should have been in something else. But at least they did do it in the annual, not in the regular book. Yeah, again, I have mixed feelings about whether this works for the character or not. But at the end of the day, I'm not a big fan of it because it's just not my. It's not it's not the version of the character that I enjoy. So, what are your thoughts on it, Rocky?
Well, I like Erica Henderson, and I've got a nice Squirrel Girl collection that I'm quite fond of. This isn't my cup of tea for Harley either. But just literally just hearing you describe the story and looking at it is funny, it is comical. It was cool seeing Vandal Savage here. I guess it would be foolish of me to point out that Vandal Savage is not supposed to be able to leave Gotham City because he can't because of the storyline. So he's trapped in Gotham, except of course for Harley stories, which clearly this one is out of continuity. I'm sure Erica Henderson was not told that by the editors because I don't think the editors are even told to worry about continuity in the DC universe. I guess the first thing you got to worry about is sales, and you're desperately trying to get more people to read DC comics, so throw continuity out of the wind. I can understand your comments about the whole conundrum of, well, different iterations of Harley Quinn. Okay, you're trying to cater to all these different iterations of Harley Quinn, and you're trying to create as much excitement in the character through different interpretations of the character. I can see that. My bias is in favor of sticking to one that works and just telling good stories with that one iteration. I like to think that Batman has one powerful. There's still at the heart of Batman a Frank Miller-esque type of interpretation of Batman. He's been softened up a little bit in recent years. He's more of a family man, but at heart, he's still grim and gritty. This with Harley, I find that again, it's okay. It's okay, but it's too. I like consistency, and I like, to me, if you stick to a mainstream DC universe, you can have that. There's no reason why we can't have both. I don't know why we can't have a mainstream DC universe Harley. I mean, at least with Amanda Conner and Jimmy Palmiotti, even if that necessarily is not my number one favorite iteration of Harley Quinn, there was a consistency to it that it did, in a playful way, maintain some tether to the mainstream DC universe. And then why not have Harley Quinn Black and Red and Red? Like have a monthly Harley anthology, which they've had from time to time, and that way have these types of stories in them. Have the best of both worlds. And but you know what? If the audience isn't there, and I question whether the audience is there for Harley Quinn as much as they think it is, maybe just stick to a more mainstream Harley. But that's my bias. Erica Henderson. She's got a very stylistic kind of art. You're either into her style of art or you're not. And I associate this more with Squirrel Girl. I do not associate this style with Harley Quinn. I just don't. I still have a preference for a sexy drawn Harley Quinn, a traditional DC house style, quite frankly. But for what it's worth, if given all the creative talent that we've had give their own iteration of Harley Quinn, it's about time that Erica Henderson, if anyone, if you're going to go outside the box and get a creator to draw Harley Quinn's story, particularly in a creative environment where sky's the limit and any iteration is going, by all means, Erica Henderson is the one to pick here. And I have to say, there's something about this cover that I actually like. It's not particularly all, the provocative, sexy type of Harley cover, but there's something about it I like. It's different. I even like the trade dress. I actually like the way that trade dress looks. It looks pretty sharp, and I actually hope they keep the trade dress for a while because I think it's really well done. And again, Erica Henderson, I don't mind her style in something like from time to time, even though I wouldn't want to see her regularly on the Harley title. Her particular style anyway. Her storytelling's good. Did she write the story? Is she the writer as well? Yeah, well, honestly, this is my bias. So I like her. This is actually a decent story. It's not compliant with continuity, but I'll let that pass. The story itself is decent enough. I would like this story with a more traditional House DC style. But all in all, not bad.
Yeah, again, like I said, it's just, I think just they're trying out a different iteration of the character. And as far as, just about any Batman story having Frank Miller influences, again, I'll point to Batman Robin Howard, and I'll also point to the Batman Brave and the Bold animated series which has no Frank Miller influence whatsoever and is absolutely hilarious. So yeah, I think that they're just trying to reach new audiences, and I totally agree with you. Maybe they realize they can't support two Harley Quinn books, as much as she is a fan favorite, but that's merchandising, and that's watching the HBO Harley Quinn animated series, and it's not necessarily people buying the books. So I don't know. I'm not privy to the sales. Again, I don't know why they pivoted away from what they were doing with a more serious Harley Quinn, and it's been sort of wacky, zany Harley for a while now. I think I might be misremembering, but I could swear that I saw Jimmy Palmiotti post something the other day about missing writing Harley. Imagine the sales if Amanda and Jimmy came back
Yeah.
to do, like 6 or 8 issue. Yeah. So anyway, not going to be a big mystery this time what our book of the week is, or at least what Rocky's book of the week is. Last book we're going to talk about, Nightwing, written by Tom Taylor. We have, is it written by Tom Taylor?
Yeah, or no,
Travis Moore.
Travis Moore. Yeah.
Yeah. Who's mostly known as, as an artist. But he's handling the writing duties here. But he's definitely fleshing out some ideas that were first introduced by Tom Taylor. So not only does Travis write the story, he's also responsible for the line work. Then we have Alex Guermas and Yvonne Placencia on colors, and Wes Abbott on letters. And even though it says Nightwing 2024 Annual #1, this isn't actually a Nightwing comic. This is a B comic. This is a story or a comic telling the story of B. Bennett, the Pirate Queen. It says right on the main cover, Secret Origin of B. Bennett, Pirate Queen. This is the B. Bennett that was Nightwing's girlfriend, or Dick Grayson's girlfriend when he was actually Rick after he'd been shot in the head by KG Beast. And it's really interesting, right? Like when she first showed up, when B. Bennett first showed up, I think when Benjamin Percy was writing the Nightwing book, she was just kind of this throwaway bartender character, certainly not a main character. And then more when Dan Jurgens took over, she became more than a supporting character, got fleshed out, became a love interest, and all that sort of stuff. And then when Tom Taylor came on, after I think about a year, he reached back, brought B into the story, introduced this unknown, this heretofore non-existent, I believe, backstory for her, that she was, raised in secret by pirates and that sort of thing, and kind of fleshed out the character. Well, now, so adding a second layer, if you will, I mean, I'm simplifying here. And now Travis Moore is going, hold my beer, Tom Taylor. You took this character. Well, actually, I guess he's going to the 4th level, right? Because say Benjamin Percy was level 1 with B, and then Dan Jurgens, I can grab that character to do something more interesting, level 2, and then Tom Taylor going, okay, no guys, I can go pull B and make her a secret pirate, and we'll call that level 3, and then Travis Moore to all 3 of them. Hold my beer. I'm gonna take everything that you've done. I'm not gonna throw any of it out. It's all gonna make complete sense. And I'm going to create this amazing backstory for this character where I'm ready for my B. Bennett miniseries. I'm ready for my B. Bennett ongoing, especially if Travis Moore is going to write it and draw it, because he has created a really interesting backstory, a really fun story. And not only does he go back and pull from all the things that other writers have done with B. Bennett, he goes back even further to the Grayson series when Dick Grayson was a member of Spiral, and he acknowledges all the nonsense with Leviathan and all that kind of stuff, and he builds the story, and all the credit in the world to Travis Moore for making it make sense, for fitting it within the pages of the annual where it doesn't feel choppy and I don't feel like anything got missed. This is just a master class in going back, and I guess we'll say it's a retcon. It's a lot easier with this type of character. I was talking a little bit earlier about retconning Zarnia, and the destruction of that planet, the history of Zarnia and what have you, and how it was a little wonky because you think that that information would have showed up in a Lobo comic by now. Here's the advantage that Travis Moore has. B. Bennett is such a recent character. You know, she just showed up within the last, 3 or 4 years. And so it's not like she's got this long history and has shown up in a ton of books or whatever, where people are going to go, oh, well, if B. Bennett was secretly a member of Spiral, we would have known by now. Well, no, we wouldn't. We would not have, because she hasn't been around that long. So he does such a fantastic job of telling this story. It's wonderfully paced. The dialogue is fantastic. It's scripted really well. He has the advantage of writing and drawing it, you know, and thank God they gave him enough time to, you know, do whatever he needed to do and the space to do it, because he draws it wonderfully as well. And, you know, it wasn't like I disliked B. Bennett when she was Rick's girlfriend, but I didn't have a particular affinity for her either. I thought she was a little boring. So I did appreciate when Tom Taylor came and added that pirate backstory to her. And that made her more interesting. And now I can't wait to learn more about the character. I want her to show up all the time. I want to see more of her. I want to read about her. She's become even more interesting. Like, what a job. I wish I could have been there for the conversation, because I'm sure Travis must have talked about this with Tom Taylor when Travis said, Hey, Tom, I got this idea for B. Bennett where I can kind of flesh her out and make her more interesting. I wish I could have been a fly on the wall of that conversation, because I have a feeling that Tom Taylor's brain must have just went, oh my God, such a fantastic idea, Travis. You know, how amazing. And yeah, I have no knowledge of that. Maybe I'm completely wrong. But I have a feeling, knowing what I know of Tom Taylor, that he probably thought this was a fantastic idea. But again, all credit to Travis Moore, because just because you have a good idea doesn't mean you land it, right? He landed it. He landed it 100%. This is just such a fantastic story. It's complicated because there are a lot of twists and turns that involve several different clandestine agencies within the DC universe and what have you. And there's some twists and turns, but it never gets so convoluted that you feel lost or you don't understand what's going on. And again, all credit to Travis for doing this in such a way that it doesn't contradict anything that came before, and it's believable. You can completely believe it, because he doesn't do a flashback where you go, oh, that's not how it happened, or it couldn't have happened that way. Everything that we're told is easy to believe. It's easy to understand that this is exactly who this character always was, even though that's not the case. So what a masterclass in how to evolve a character and make them, you know, something more. Take everything people have built before you with that character and be additive to it without disrespecting or dismissing anything they've done. Just an amazing, amazing job by Travis Moore. The job he did on this comic completely elevated this week. Without this book, yeah, I would have been like, yeah, below average a week this week. But this was so good that I want to read more. I would totally get a miniseries. I would physically buy a miniseries with B. Bennett, especially if Travis is drawing it. Like, you could come up with some amazing covers. I mean, she's a very attractive African-American female. And yeah, I just thought this was great. It was absolutely amazing. So no real secret on my book of the week either, I guess. So that's how it goes sometimes. So give us your thoughts on this, Rocky.
Oh, well, you said it. There was really only one candidate for pick of the week this week, and it was Nightwing. This Nightwing annual. You know, it's funny when you said that Travis Moore said, you know, he was up to the challenge, and he told Tom Taylor to hold his beer. I think he's telling Jeff Johns to hold his beer, because Jeff Johns is usually the master at sort of weaving a complex story. So you got to make a character more interesting, give a character more agency, make them, don't make them a Mary Sue, make them something organically developed and make it believable in one story, in a span of however many pages how many pages this is, 42 page comic. And so, Travis Moore did a masterful job. It feels actually there's so many moving parts. If you go back to the Grayson days, and then you go through everything that Dick Grayson has been through the Grayson period, through all those years, and through the Rick Grayson period, and like you said, through the Dan Jurgens era, and with the KG Beast, and then mixing in Spiral and Checkmate. Travis Moore even incorporates Leviathan, for God's sakes. I mean, who would have thought anything? Nothing good has come out of Bendis' Leviathan, except for the fact that when Leviathan, for a brief period, did destroy all the intelligence agencies briefly, allowing within this story for B. Bennett, whose code name was Siren, who worked for Spiral and was working undercover to get to know Dick Grayson, because when Dick Grayson lost his memory and became Rick Grayson, Spiral was concerned, because he was a former agent of Spiral, that maybe Rick Grayson, if he got his memory back, could compromise the intelligence operations of their organization. That's it in a nutshell. Enter Destiny, otherwise, codename Siren. She's going to go undercover. And as a bartender, and that's how she meets Rick Grayson. Falls in love. Ends up ostensibly undercover, of course, and she was, but she's also looking for the murderer of her mother. There's that backstory, and now she's looking for the murderer of her mother. There's all kinds of inner revelations to that. There's even a hint that she has another potential love interest in another fellow agent named Liam, although they don't get together. There's, we got to know Liam. We got to know this rival agent by the name of Ice, who worked for Checkmate. So there was, for a brief period of time, there was a rivalry between Spiral and Checkmate, and she was Siren, and then her counterpart was Ice for Checkmate. Her commander, Carmen Navarro, ended up being the one that played a role in the incident that led to her being separated from her mother early on. All these moving parts. This is the tip of the iceberg, what I'm saying. And it all comes together so well. This feels like a full, complete story. There's lots of character work here. He nails the character work. It's interesting. The art's fantastic. And the color work is great. It's easy to read. It's easy to follow. It's satisfying. And, it's funny because in the hands of a lesser writer, this could have been a disaster. Because in many ways, I mean, if this was a story that was not done properly, you might be thinking to yourself, "Oh my God, this is going to sound forced. This is going to be you're trying to elevate a character artificially. It's going to feel forced. It's not going to work." But it doesn't feel forced. It feels like it's natural, because Bee's a likable character to begin with, and Bee Bennett isn't even her real name, but she's a likable character to begin with. She's become a pirate queen. She's a former spy. She's an orphan. Her mother was a spy. Oh my God, things just pile up, but everything fits. And especially the reward here is that those of us who have been along the ride for Nightwing throughout all his Nightwing years and his Rick Grayson years and his Grayson years, we're rewarded because there's at least one character, and isn't it sort of interesting that the reward we get is through a character that we never thought about, and how Travis Moore has taken this character and just, as you said, elevated it, almost didn't put her into God mode, but she's that, if this was a video game, she'd be close to the level 10 or whatever I don't play video games. I shouldn't try a video game analogy. But in any event, I agree with you. And no mystery here as to what my pick of the week is. It's this. And I share your sentiment. This was the high point of the week.
Yeah, no doubt. And one thing that I will mention, this isn't the first time that Travis, again, he's mostly known for his work as an artist, but this isn't the first time that he's written and drawn something. I think, didn't he have, pretty sure, I'm just trying to look it up real fast. He did a book called Black Flamingo, I think is what it was called, with over at Image, which was a really great story. So yeah, Sins of the Black Flamingo. So if you're so inclined and you want to read more of him as a writer, I think Andrew Wheeler wrote it, co-wrote it along with Travis. So check that out. So anyway, only a couple of collections this week. We've got The World's Greatest Superheroes hardcover, which is a fully painted graphic novel by Alex Ross and Paul Dini. So it's collected in an absolute edition here. So that's, the big oversized issue. It's $100, 400 pages with a slip bound case. And then we also have Batman 3 Jokers hardcover, which collects Batman 3 Jokers 1 through 3, which took forever to come out, highly anticipated, and I think was my biggest disappointment of the year that it did come out. And as much as I look at the names on this: Jeff Johns, Jason Fabok, Brad Anderson. I mean, those are three of my favorite creators in their respective fields, and I can't believe they did something that I liked as little as this. But it just didn't make any sense. Didn't resolve anything. So, but if you're so inclined, you want it all in one volume, there you go. So, typically now is when we give our pick of the week, but yeah, no surprise, everybody. If you listen, you know what it is. It wasn't ever in doubt. Definitely pick this up. This is the way you do it. And congrats to Travis Moore for a masterpiece. Just absolutely memorable, right? Like, we're going to be thinking about this one for a long time. Definitely anytime I read a story or she shows up in the pages of any comic, Nightwing or otherwise, I'm going to remember this annual. So that's saying something.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Anything to add, Rocky, before we wind it up?
No. It was. It's nice. As much as I love reviewing comics with you, Chase, it's nice to have a short week once in a while.
Yeah, definitely. We'll have an interview coming up later this week, everybody, with Brian Buccellato about the final issue of Justice League versus Godzilla versus Kong, which that book has been, I think, book of the week just about every week it's been out for me. It's just, like, to sum it all up, it's just super fun. It's such a fun story. So can't wait to chat with him about that. Don't forget, still continuing the Daily Spawn over the Comic Source YouTube channel. So go and check that out if you're so inclined. If you're checking this out on YouTube, on Rocky's channel, be sure you subscribe, ring the notification bell so you know when new content comes out. Leave comments below. Let us know your thoughts on the week as well. And if you are listening on audio only and you want to become a part of that community on YouTube, just head over Comic Space Boom ! You'll find Rocky's channel there. You can subscribe and join us. If you want to listen to the audio-only Comic Source content, you can head over to your favorite podcasting platform or podcasting app. Do a search for the Comic Source and subscribe. There's over 2,000 episodes of back episodes of the Comic Source for your listening pleasure. And then, of course, going forward, all our stuff is on YouTube as well. So just do a search for the Comic Source on YouTube. You'll find the interviews there going forward since the beginning of this year, as well as our Spawn Daily. So we really appreciate the support as always, everybody. And we will talk to you next time.
Catch you later.